So welcome everyone. My name is Isabelle Jenniches. I'm a co-founder of the New Mexico Healthy Soil Working Group. With me are my friends and colleagues, robbhirsch. Rob, say hello.
Hi there.
And Christina Allday-Bondy.
Hi.
Who you will meet throughout the evening. If you're joining us for the first time, we are a grassroots advocacy group. We're perhaps best known for our work to pass the New Mexico Healthy Soil Act in 2019, which created the Healthy Soil Program in the state, providing voluntary incentives and education to farmers and ranchers to improve soil health in New Mexico. We've been holding these virtual gatherings since the beginning of the pandemic, and we're inviting New Mexicans to reflect on our personal connection to soil health. Today, we're so pleased to host Congresswoman Deb Haaland.
So, Representative Deb Haaland is an enrolled member of Laguna Pueblo, which is, as many of you know, west of Albuquerque. She grew up in a military family, moving many times as her father served in the Marines. While raising her daughter as a single mom, she earned both her bachelor's and law degrees from UNM. As a tribal executive, she championed earth-friendly business practices and policies. In 2016, she was elected to represent the 1st Congressional District of New Mexico, becoming one of 2 Native American women in the U.S. Congress, where her committee assignments include serving as vice chair of the Natural Resources Committee. We are more honored than we can convey to welcome Representative Deb Haaland to Soil Stories.
Hello, everyone. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. And I am speaking to you from the ancestral homelands of the Tiwa and Tanoan people. The Sandia Mountains are right behind me. And I am grateful every single morning I wake up and see those beautiful mountains. But thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. And I'm Deb Haaland, the Congresswoman from New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. One of my priorities in Congress is fighting climate change, moving our country to a renewable energy economy, and just in general, protecting our Earth. My whole life, I've been a supporter for our environment. I was raised, that's how my parents raised me. My dad was raised on a farm. I'm from Laguna Pueblo, so the Pueblo Indians have an ancient agricultural tradition here in New Mexico. And so that's really where my soil story begins. I was born on December 2nd, 1960. I was born into a military family. My dad was a 30-year career Marine, and my mom was in the Navy. I was actually born in Winslow, Arizona, because my grandparents lived there, and they lived there because they were part of the assimilation policies of the United States. So the Pueblo Indians were encouraged to move off of their lands because the United States sorely wanted Native Americans to just melt into mainstream America. However, you can take the farmer out of the Pueblo, but it's hard to take the Pueblo out of the farmer. And on weekends and some weeks during the summer, my grandparents would go back to Laguna, and my grandfather, who had farmed since he was a young boy, continued farming. And in fact, they would bring back their harvest with them to Winslow, where my grandmother would process all the food. And I can remember spending summers with my grandparents in Winslow and just peering through the kitchen window while my grandmother boiled blue corn and ground blue corn and made deer jerky out of the deer that my grandfather would hunt. And she was always either preparing for a meal in the future or preparing our meal for that day. My grandmother, she spent many hours in the kitchen and outside processing the food that my grandfather would grow. So I had you know, I was in a unique position. I was the third. I was the third in my family. I had two older sisters and a younger brother, and so I was too young to join my sisters and my cousins when they went off doing something, and I was too old to join my brother and my other cousins. So I was kind of in the middle, but so I used to just go with my grandfather down to the field below the village while he irrigated and pulled weeds, and we picked worms off of the ears of corn. You know, he never used pesticides. He was an organic farmer. And even if he could afford, I mean, even if he didn't believe in the organic nature of farming, he never would have been able to afford pesticides anyway. He was a traditional farmer from the word go. And in fact, when he passed away in the early 70s, he died in his cornfield while he was hoeing weeds. And that was, we all felt like that was, you know, that was the way that he would have wanted to go, because he loved the earth. You know, him and I would spend hours and hours down at the field. He had apricot trees there too. And so we would sometimes pick, you know, apricots off the tree and sit in the shade of the tree while the irrigation watered his fields. And we, you know, that was a summer that I could remember every single time. So I feel very grateful that both of my parents, my dad being raised on a farm in Minnesota, they knew the value of local food. They knew the value of growing your own food. They knew the value of hard work as well. And so it's kind of an unlikely place for me to end up in Congress. But part of, you know, I guess my drive to protect our land and our water and our oceans, because my dad was in the military. I lived on both coasts for much of my childhood. He was stationed in military bases all over Southern California and also in Virginia. So I spent time near the, always on the beach in the summer, both in the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So I feel like I got a very large dose of the outdoors, because that's what my parents believed in. That's how they were raised. And so when I started working to elect candidates that I liked, candidates who I felt reflected my values, it was natural for me to try to protect the things that I knew were very valuable to my people, to my parents, to my grandparents. And so so there I started out as a phone volunteer, working in campaign offices to make sure that Indians were getting out to vote. I felt it was important that, you know, when I think about protecting our land, protecting our water, that is directly connected to politics, because we have elected officials in this country, on local level, on national level, you know, on district levels, who are making decisions for all of us. And it always made sense to me that I should work to make sure that those seats were filled by people who cared about the things that I cared about. And so I started out as a phone volunteer, helping candidates get elected, making sure that Indians got out to vote. That turned into me actually showing up in Indian country and driving all over New Mexico to Native communities all over the state to make sure that they were voting. There were many times where you know, you're passing you know, rows of corn, you're driving down and you see people's fields sprouting up all over Indian country. And it's a wonderful thing to know that your ancestors started that tradition here in New Mexico, and that people care enough to carry that on. So now my job in Congress is to make sure that we're supporting that way of life. Culture and traditions is extremely important to New Mexico. It's extremely important to communities all over the country, whether you're Native or not. My dad's grandparents immigrated from Norway here to the United States in 1881, and they brought their farming tradition with them as well. So in this time of climate change, when we are sort of, and in this time of the coronavirus, when we're, you know, looking at our lives and asking ourselves what's really important to us, right? Is it, I mean, what's really important? Is it making sure that we're protecting what we have? Because maybe someday we won't be able to import, you know, vegetables and fruits from far away, that we'll have to rely on ourselves to grow the things that we need to eat. And there's no question that we have to make sure that we can survive some way, and we can only survive if we have food and water. So those are the things that I feel that I need to protect while I'm in Congress. And you know, I never grew up with a, you know, with a dream of being in politics or a dream of going to Congress. I just grew up, I guess, with a dream of making my parents proud and making sure that I was living the way that my parents and grandparents taught me. And you know, I didn't realize that my life would take all these different turns. I didn't go to college until I was 28 years old. No one told me to go to college. Neither one of my parents graduated from college. I gave birth to my daughter 4 days after I graduated with my undergraduate degree. And she grew up with me being an activist, and now she's an activist herself. So in a way that, you know, those of us who aren't living on a farm any longer, or aren't tilling the soil for our living, we feel obligated to make sure that we protect the people who absolutely are. So when I think about, you know, my obligation as a mother to make sure that my daughter is living her life with compassion and love for fellow human beings, and love for the earth, making sure that she is responsible and does the things that, you know, that my mother and my grandmother would be proud of. I think that, you know, we think about Indigenous communities, climate change, the condition of Mother Earth, and how climate change impacts those communities in such a negative way. And during this administration, more than ever, we have seen that, you know, an exacerbated form of, I guess, disrespect for the earth. You know, sitting in one of my committee hearings and listening to the chairman of the Tohono O'odham tribe talk about the administration coming to blast apart sacred sites so they can build a wall. I mean, blast it with dynamite, like truly blast apart their sacred site, which is on their own land, with dynamite so they could build the wall. It is, it's astounding that that so little respect has been paid to the original inhabitants of this continent by this administration. So I realize that there is a tremendous amount of work to do. Climate change isn't going anywhere unless we do something about it. We have an obligation to support the people who are closest to the earth. Those are our farmers. Those are our, you know, those are our people on the ground who are working to make sure that they are carrying on these traditions. So in Congress, I've been fortunate not only to give voice to the underrepresented communities, but to also to also push legislation that I know will be beneficial to folks in the future. We're proud that the 30 by 30 resolution to save nature, which will conserve 30% of our land and waters by 2030, has made it onto the Biden environmental policy. I think that is a good start. I am very proud to be the vice chair of the Natural Resources Committee and the chair of the subcommittee on national parks, forests, and public lands. Proud to have fought for, and you know, even though I feel sometimes we lose these things, we fought for Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante and Chaco Canyon. And it's important that we have brought folks to the table to give testimony on record about what those areas mean to them. So, I know there's a lot of work left to do. I appreciate the opportunity to work with so many colleagues. I feel like at no time has there ever been as many environmental activists in Congress and the Senate in my lifetime, I guess. I was sworn in with many environmentalists who were on my committee, who were fighting to increase wilderness areas, who were fighting to clean up the oceans and stop plastic from invading our, you know, our oceans, and folks who are you know, fighting for environmental justice for communities, because we know that so much of the pollution and degradation happens in communities of color. And so I realize there is a lot of work to do. I am super excited to continue that work. And right now in my reelection, climate change and the environment continue to be one of my #1 issues. So, so certainly not going anywhere on that. So I'm happy to be here, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and we'll look forward to answering some questions.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. We're very lucky to have you with us tonight. And I wanted to invite everyone to please ask questions for the Congresswoman in the chat bar, and then I'll go through the list in order that the questions are received. And I just wanted to say, after listening to your story, first I'll just say I'm independent, and our Healthy Soil Working Group is nonpartisan, of course, and we have representatives from both parties on our program for sure. But I do want to acknowledge that we are so proud of you and so thankful that you are our representative. And we're thankful for your story. It's a very touching story, and we're thankful for you as a daughter of your father who served in the military, and your mother, and your connection to agriculture. Your commitment to Mother Earth, whether or not it's politically expedient, you do that because it's right. And we're very thankful to have you as our Congresswoman.
Thank you.
And I will ask a quick question, and then as questions come in, most importantly, get to the people who are on our webinar. But my question is, we have an idea that we've been consulting with a whole network of people in our state about, to become 100% regenerative agriculture state by 2030, the date that the UN says we have to act decisively on climate change, or it becomes out of control situation completely. But if we as a state became 100% regenerative agriculture, committed to soil health principles, I was just wondering your opinion on the best ways to collaborate to do that, to accomplish that goal. Collaborate with Native American communities in our state, as well as collaborate with all potential partners. Do you have a recommendation for that?
Well, absolutely. And collaboration is a really excellent word, because when I think sometimes about Native Americans, the Pueblo Indians were farmers, right? We were farming even before we migrated to the Rio Grande Valley. And so we've been farming for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's kind of, you know, when I think about like Laguna Pueblo, we were still in a bartering economy until 1950, when they opened the uranium mines at Laguna. People were still farming and trading their what they grew for other things that they needed. Nobody really, I mean, they didn't have a need for working and money. My grandmother didn't even have running water or electricity until 1975. So they had their homes and they lived off the land, and they traded for what they needed. And then all of a sudden they're thrown into a cash economy pretty much overnight. And there you go. When you start gaining things, right, you have to have a job so that you can pay your bills. You can't, take, a truckload of corn to P&M and say, here's my, I'm paying for my gas bill or whatever it is. And so I feel like if we want people to start farming again, they need to be able to make a living off of it. They need to be able to pay their bills with the work that they're doing. So that means, how are we going to help them to be able to do that? A farm to table plan with elementary schools across the state, a farm to table plan with restaurants across the state. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration that I think has to happen, and people need to be committed to it so that we can all have each other's backs. It's not going to, I mean, we have to, as a state, make a plan, build the infrastructure. Do we have hubs, agriculture hubs where people bring their produce and then it gets sent out to different areas with refrigeration and all of these things, right? It's going to take some infrastructure to have 100% regenerative agriculture in our state. So that means that our federal delegation needs to make sure that that's included in any infrastructure plan. And in fact, if we come up with a really great plan, there's no reason why other states shouldn't be able to replicate that as well. So, I mean, those are a few ideas that I would toss out now with just at the top of my head, but I certainly would love to dig in to an idea like that and see where it takes us and how we can accomplish it.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful response. And I want to get to some questions from the participants, and I'll try to stay in order if I can. Jeff Goebel, would you like to ask the Congresswoman a question, or would you like to unmute?
Sure. Thank you for your time today, Representative Haaland. So I just kind of built on what Rob was talking about, and I know you said that you and Senator Udall talked, and some others have talked about the 2030, 30% by 2030, and it gets what Rob was talking about is, could we be even more ambitious, which is that idea of 100% regenerative by 2030, and that's a couple reasons for that. One is the UN is calling us both for climate change, but also species extinction. So we got two whammies coming at us, and they've given us that deadline of 2030. Otherwise, catastrophic impacts are going to start happening to our world. So why not be more ambitious than that? And then the other, and you've kind of answered that already, so I appreciate that. And then also, but JFK set the goal of 10 years to be on the moon, and we did it. And we didn't have the technology or the wherewithal. So I'm thinking about, can we be even more ambitious? And part of achieving something is having vision, being ambitious with it, and then kind of rallying around that. So you've kind of answered that. But another part, I guess, that I might even add to it is that some stuff out of Australia from scientists over there are saying that our climate heating problem is 1% carbon, 9% hydrogen, water vapor, and 90% bare ground. And so can we develop strategies that really start covering the soil surface, which is like the 5 principles of soil health do that. But, how do we start cooling the earth and perhaps even rehydrating New Mexico, the soils of New Mexico, and taking care of our streams and all that sort of thing, even while we become hotter and drier here as is predicted with climate shift. So you've kind of already answered some of that stuff. So I don't know if there's any other additional thoughts that you might have based on what I've added. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And what I'll say is I'm ready to be ambitious. I'm always ready to be ambitious. So
yeah.
So thank you for your ideas, and absolutely willing to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go along with the questions, and normally we go till 6:30, but the Congresswoman has to have an event at 6:15, so she ended her presentation a little early so we can get some more questions in. So I'll jump to it. First, to say that Jermaine Mitchell, thanks you so much for your service. And next on the list was the Watershed Association has a question if they want to unmute.
Hey, sorry, my name's Maury. I just stole my Watershed Association Zoom for the evening, but Congresswoman, thank you so much for representing New Mexico and making us proud in Congress. I think you're a supporter of the Green New Deal. I know that it might seem kind of partisan to talk about it, but I'm hoping to talk about it in a less partisan way. And that is, I think a lot of land managers in some ways kind of feel left out of that right now, or they feel sort of vilified. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about maybe in future iterations of the Green New Deal, or if that's something that you will continue to move towards, how you will be advocating for incorporating regenerative agriculture, soil health, traditional ecological knowledge, and systems ecology into future policies, and also how the federal government can include land managers and ranchers in the solutions to climate change rather than vilifying them. So thank you.
Well, I don't mean to vilify anybody, and in fact, the Green New Deal, it's aspirational at this point. It's a non-binding resolution that we did to say this is an idea that we would like to move forward. There's nothing set in stone. We don't have any legislation that's accompanying that at this time. What we do have are ideas and folks who are bringing ideas forth. So. I mean, I'm always ready and willing to sit at the table. No decisions have been made. In fact, I feel like a few of my bills might be able to be part of a Green New Deal. The 30 by 30 resolution to save nature, of course, that certainly could be part of the Green New Deal. I feel like, the Democrats, we came up with this Green New Deal because you think it's catchy, right? Let's do something good for our planet and move this along. And then before you know it, everyone's saying we don't want cows, we don't want airplanes, we don't want all these things. And I almost feel like it's a little, people, they want to doom it before it's even had a chance to, to become something. So the Green New Deal is aspirational. Anybody who wants to join us in talking about the Green New Deal are welcome to. I am always happy to engage with people in any conversation about the future of our state and the future of our country. And so, of course, I am all ears. I am open. I would just suggest anybody call my office who wants to have a conversation with me about that. And I just feel like there's a little bit of a misunderstanding on what the Green New Deal is and what it is not. And so, so as far as I'm concerned, I want it to be good. You know, when I think about the New Deal that President Roosevelt put forth, and how it lifted people out of poverty, how it gave people you know, purpose in their lives, and unleashing this amazing infrastructure that built so many things in our country. You know, in with the WPA, there's a little museum up in Clayton, New Mexico, a WPA museum, and it has a lot of artwork and ceramics and furniture and things like that that people made because of the WPA. I mean, it gave a lot of people hope for the future, and that's what we want. We want the Green New Deal to be something that will give people hope for the future. It's not meant to vilify anyone or leave anybody out. On the contrary, we want it to bring people together and be something for everyone. I'm a progressive, yes. I'm also one of the highest rated freshmen for bipartisanship in the Congress right now. Most all of my bills have been bipartisan. In fact, I have more bipartisan bills than any of my freshman colleagues. I believe that we get things done by working together, and that's what I will continue to do.
Thank you, Congresswoman, and thank you for that question too. And the next on the questions is Amy Larsen, if you want to unmute.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with us tonight. I really appreciate hearing from you. My question is, given that currently New Mexico's economy is, you know, very connected to oil and gas, I'm curious how you Mexico, and maybe focusing that question a little bit more, how do you think New Mexico can really contribute to improving climate change?
Well, I mean, it's no secret. This has been on my platform. I want us to be a renewable energy. I want us to be a global leader in renewable energy in New Mexico. We have over 300 days of sun per year. There's no reason why we can't do that. And that doesn't mean that we're going to, you know, get rid of the gas and oil industry overnight or anything like that. But it means that we have another reliable way of producing energy that's clean here in New Mexico. That's wind, that's solar. And I feel like just because we're exploring that, just because we want to move to a renewable energy economy, a clean energy economy, doesn't mean that we want people to lose their jobs. In fact, I understand how important jobs are. I've lived on the edge of poverty many times, and you know, have raised my daughter as a single mom, so I know what that's like to be on food stamps and to worry about where your next you know, rent payment's going to come from. So so I feel like we still need to move forward on our renewable energy economy. It doesn't make sense not to, with all of the sun that we have. And if you've ever driven up to Clayton, my sister lives in Clayton, that's why I go up to Clayton a lot. That road from Tucumcari to Clayton, it is so windy, right? It's like the wind, there is so much wind in northeastern New Mexico. It is not even funny. We need infrastructure to build transmission lines up there so that we can move energy back and forth. And I just feel very strongly that we should not have all our eggs in one basket, because every time the price of oil goes up or down, it affects the bottom line here. And you know what? The sun, one of my constituents here, he calls it the the nuclear reactor in the sky, and that's will never go away. That is going to be constant no matter where we are. So I think that exploring that energy, trying to make sure that it's that we are doing all we can to bring those jobs here to New Mexico so that people can have clean, high-paying, livable wage jobs with benefits is the way to go. And I really feel like we should take a hard look at why we need to do that. We have the largest methane cloud in the world hovering above the northwest corner of our state. Ironically, the Navajo Nation has been hit by COVID worse than any place here in our state. I'm not a medical expert, but if you're breathing in polluted air, it stands to reason that if you have a respiratory virus that's going around, that it's going to affect people, maybe worse or in different ways than it would other communities. I don't want anyone living in pollution. I think we need to generate clean energy so that our communities have a chance to thrive.
Beautiful. I know it's getting close on time, but I wanted to acknowledge that Stephen Glass and Ann Stauffer both said that the Healthy Soils Act is exemplary. What about a national Healthy Soils plan?
Yes, I'd love to talk about that. Really, I mean, yes, there's people, we can move it, especially with, especially after the next election, I think.
Great. And then John Nutting, quickly, if you could ask your question.
I guess my question is, they keep talking about wanting small farms and producing local produce for the, for the state. But as a new farmer, when you come here, you run into some pretty heavy duty water restrictions. So I don't know, I've got a guy down the street that's been pumping water for 4 days straight to water his alfalfa, but I don't know if any of you eat alfalfa. I don't. So, it'd be nice to kind of look at how water rights can be redistributed in the state. It amazes me that somebody like, Niagara can pull millions of gallons of water out of the ground to send out of state, but yet, we're trying to feed people within the state. So is there anything we can work on there?
I'd love to try. Really love to try. I think that's why it's important that we get Pueblos to be a part of our farming economy, the 100% regenerative agriculture, because they need to use the water that is their their water rights too. So yes, I agree. We need more small farms. So absolutely, I'm happy to talk about. That's not my strong suit, but I need to learn more about all of that because I know it's complicated here in New Mexico. But absolutely would love to talk about it.
So I want to join. Zoe Fink says that she's very grateful for your work that you have done to support the coronavirus food assistance program, including opportunities for New Mexico's small-scale diversified vegetable growers. And she's very thankful for you, for your efforts. And we're very thankful for your time with us tonight. And I know you have a commitment now at 6:15. So I want to let you go to do that. And also acknowledge that people on the phone, given that we stay till 6:30 typically, we could have a quick conversation with those on the line about achieving regenerative agriculture in New Mexico if you want to stay on. But at this point, I want to let you go, Congresswoman, and if you want to say any closing comment.
Well, I thank you all so much for caring about our soil. I think this is a wonderful program. And everyone should have a soil story, right? Everybody should know where their vegetables come from. And, I lived with my brother for a while. He lived in Carmel, California, and we used to have to drive through Salinas to get to my sister's house. And, there's fields and fields, strawberries, lettuce, artichokes, you name it, they grow it there. And you would see people, working in those fields every day, working very hard. And I understood that because of, not that I worked super hard on my grandfather's field, I was just a kid, but I understood what that meant, right? I understood that connection. And I just want you to know how grateful I am for your passion for our earth, for our water, for our soil. I think that that is something that needs to be spread around as much as possible, so that everybody realizes and understands how important that is, and especially for kids. Some kids, they grow up in the city and they don't know what it's like to haul water or open an irrigation gate or hoe weeds or pick worms off corn. They don't have that opportunity. And so I feel like, it's up to us to find ways to make sure that our children get those opportunities, so that we can develop a passion for generations to come. So thank you all so much for having me. Really happy to be here, and thank you so much.